Good morning, veterans, ladies and gentlemen, and children, and welcome to the 2020 virtual Anzac Day service here from the Yandina-Eumundi-RSL for our town of Yandina. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this area, the Gubbi Gubbi people, and to honour their leaders past, present and emerging. I know that there's already been some amazing services online this morning, and I'm sure that many of you have listened to some great speeches. So this morning, rather than going into a speech, I'd rather just focus on how we can serve and support the community and allow them to commemorate this in the best way that we possibly can. Now, as many of you know, it's Yandina's 150th birthday. We're said to be the birthplace of the Sunshine Coast, at least in the way that we currently know it. And so for our local community, things were buzzing around earlier this year as people planned out what they were going to do to celebrate this great event here. And it is such a big milestone for us all. And as we saw, under the COVID crisis, that this was no longer going to be possible for many of the events that was there, for us, honouring what Anzac Day means in this community seemed to be even more important than ever. I just want us to be able to then have this noted in history that we were still able to come together as a community, albeit virtually. This morning we actually have an amazing young veteran called Anthony Morehouse who will be speaking for us. From the age of 14, Anthony's dream was to join the military and become a Special Forces soldier. At school he was an Australian Army cadet in Year 12, and Anthony received a scholarship to the Australian Defence Force Academy where he spent the next 3 years. He finished military training in the Royal Military College of Duntroon, graduating as an infantry officer in 1999. 6 days after graduation, Anthony was on the border of East and West Timor, leading a platoon of infantry soldiers on active service. Anthony returned to East Timor 2 more times before successfully completing the Commando Special Forces selection course as a captain at what is now known as 2 Commando Regiment. Anthony was responsible for leading Australia's Tactical Assault Group East during the land-based terrorism-related hostage situations. It was during his tenure at 2 Commando that Anthony was awarded a Commander Special Operations Commendation for the leadership during the counter-terrorism operations. After 9 years in the Army, Anthony left the military to pursue a career in crisis and emergency management. Initially then saw him protecting a team of 50 engineers and medical staff who were building hospitals in Iraq, and then, having started his own company, leading crisis response teams during large-scale natural and man-made incidents in Australia and around the world. Anthony remains an active part of the Australian veterans community and is passionate about helping veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. Anthony lives on the Sunshine Coast with his wife Sarah, who is also a veteran who spent 6 years with the Australian Medical Corps, and their 2 daughters, Ella and Georgia. May I please introduce Mr. Anthony Moyer.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honour to speak with you today. An Anzac Day like no other in its 104-year history. While we are not at war, we are certainly in the middle of a global crisis. A crisis that has required us to come together as families, communities, as a country and as a global humanity like never before. My grandmother was a young girl during World War I. She lived through the Great Depression as well as World War II. She would say to us that the problem with our generation is that we'd never been through a war to make us realise what was truly important in life. Her words are ever present in me at this time, as it's taken this crisis to make me appreciate what is truly important. And ultimately, I think this crisis is reminding all of us of our humanity, of the importance of looking after our mates, of helping our community and adapting to new ways of life with humour and a she'll be right attitude. It comes as no surprise to me as a veteran and someone who's operated in a lot of crisis situations that the very attributes that my grandmother valued in her generation are the same attributes that I'm seeing all around me in our communities as we rise to confront this crisis. And these same attributes are what for me encapsulates the Anzac spirit, those of mateship, servitude, and ingenuity. The Gallipoli campaign was the birthplace of the Anzac tradition. It was the first large-scale campaign that saw young Australian and New Zealand soldiers fighting for their lives and for those of their mates. Under new national flags, post-Federation, it was the coming of age for these new frontier countries. In my first year at the Australian Defence Force Academy, I travelled to Gallipoli on a military battlefield tour. And with military historians, we spent 2 weeks learning about the battles, the stories of bravery, the strategic decisions, and the mistakes. But what stays with me still, 24 years on, are the stories of humanity, of mateship, sometimes even between enemies. I remember standing in a trench that in August of 1915 had been filled with Australian soldiers. Only 20 metres in front of me were the Turkish trenches. These two trenches about 500 metres down the hill from the famed Battle of Lone Pine. These trenches were both the fighting positions and the living quarters of hundreds of young, brave and scared soldiers. As the battle went on and turned from days to weeks to months, each side was growing low on critical supplies. The Turkish had tobacco, but no paper. The Australians had paper in the form of letters from home, but no tobacco. The soldiers of each side decided amongst themselves to halt the battle one afternoon per week, to bury their dead, and afterwards to swap supplies and pause the horrors of war. Smoke would billow from the trenches. Songs were sung. And there was a collective sense of humanity, of mateship, if only for a short time. Those brave young Anzacs who signed up to fight for their country in World War I, World War II, the Korean War and the Vietnam War, did so out of a sense of servitude, in the belief of something bigger than themselves. It's this same sense of servitude and a sense of adventure that were the reasons that I signed up, as it was for those that I served with, many of whom had seen active service in Somalia, Rwanda, East Timor, and most recently in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's this same sense of servitude that has seen the Australian Defence Force more active on home soil in Australia this year, 2020, than at any other time since World War II. What started with our Defence Force's response to the devastating fires quickly moved to responding to the floods, and now the COVID-19 crisis. Behind me here is a photo of my counter-terrorism team back in 2003, in the years after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Some of the faces in this photo are no longer with us. Sergeant Brett Wood, who was awarded the Medal of Gallantry for his bravery in Afghanistan, was killed in action in 2011. Sergeant Peter Caife and I were really close. He suffered, as many veterans do, from post-traumatic stress. After serving in Cambodia and East Timor and Iraq and Afghanistan, it was tough for Pete to reacclimatise, reassimilate with life back home. Pete was a great Aussie larrikin, but in so much mental pain he ended his own life several years ago. Brett and Pete believed in their mission. They were smart and funny guys who could bring a plan together in the most difficult of circumstances. Most importantly, they believed in their mates, in their brothers and sisters in arms, and they would do anything for them. They trained, they fought, they served, and they died for a purpose bigger than themselves. And in their memory, I feel the Anzac Spirit. We see these same attributes, these values, this Anzac spirit in our emergency services, our frontline medical teams, our teachers, our essential services at this time. These brave people are making our society function, solving new problems in new ways with limited resources, protecting and caring for our community, all in the name of something bigger than themselves. And I think this is the Anzac spirit. It's alive in us today, as it was on the shores of Gallipoli and more recently in the deserts of Iraq and Afghanistan. So for me, this is the purpose of Anzac Day, to connect us to generations that have passed, to connect us to those who have served, to those who do serve, and to those who have paid the ultimate price. My hope is that we can take this opportunity, wherever we physically are, to reflect, to show gratitude to those who have served at the expense of their own comfort and safety, and perhaps even to ask ourselves some questions. How are we going to live up to the Anzac spirit? How are we going to use our ingenuity to get us through this crisis, to make a better world for all of us? How are we going to extend our hand in help to others, locally and globally? And how are we going to dedicate ourselves to service in the name of something bigger than ourselves? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anthony. That was a great speech. Now, each year we're pleased to have our local youth take part in our service. And so this year, with a little bit of technology, we've still been able to have the speeches recorded for our children. So first I'd like to introduce to you Yandina State School with Ruby and Not a Hero.
Not a Hero by Clyde Hamilton. The Anzac Day-march was over. The old digger had done his best. His body ached from marching. It was time to sit and rest. He made his way to the park bench and sat with lowered head. A young boy passing saw him, approached and politely said, "Please, sir, do you mind if I ask what the medals you wear are for? Did you get them for being a hero when fighting in the war?" Startled, the old digger moved over and beckoned the boy to sit. Eagerly the lad accepted. He had not expected this. "First of all, I was not a hero," said the old digger in solemn tone, "but I served with many heroes and ones that never came home. So when you talk of heroes, it's important to understand the greatest of all heroes gave their life defending this land. The medals are worn in their honour as a symbol of respect. Old diggers wear them on Anzac Day. It shows they don't forget." The old digger then climbed to his feet and asked the boy to stand. Carefully he removed the medals and placed them in his hand. He told him he could keep them, to treasure throughout his life, a legacy of kind left behind, paid for sacrifice. Overwhelmed, the young boy was speechless. He couldn't find words to say. It was there the old digger left him, going quietly on his way. In the distance the young boy glimpsed him, saw him turn and wave goodbye. Saddened, he sat alone on the bench, tears welled in his eyes. He never again saw him ever, but still remembers with pride. When the old digger told him of heroes, a young boy sat and cried.
Now we have the Yandina Scouts sharing with us a poem from the Book of Anzacs. This is called A Little Sprig of Wattle. And this poem was written by a soldier in 1915 when he was in Gallipoli. The living conditions were awful, and the soldier knew that a sprig of wattle from his home would help him remember how safe it was to live back here in Australia. Please enjoy.
Little sprig of wattle. My mother's letter came today, and for now my thoughts are far away, for in between its pages lay a little sprig of wattle. The old home now looks at its best. The message ran, the country's dressed. In spring's gay cloak I have pressed a little sprig of wattle.
I almost see that glimpse of spring. The very air here seems to ring with joyful notes of birds that sing among the sprigs of wattle. The old home snug amidst the pines, the trickling creek that twists and twines, round tall gum roots and undermines, is all ablaze with wattle.
Last year we started a youth leadership program which was there to help our veteran families and their children with building some of those skills around mental resilience, communication and other life skills that we thought were valuable. So, and this is amazing to have this wonderful group of girls come together to share this poem. So we have with us today, we have Maddie, Charlotte, Georgia and Tash. And the Anzac poem that they're reading is written by a soldier in the 212th Battalion. He and 5 soldiers from Yandina were good friends and served together. So this has quite a tie back to us again.
I saw a kid a marching with medals on his chest. He marched alongside diggers who were marching 6 abreast. He knew it was Anzac Day and he walked along with pride. He did his best to keep in step with the diggers by his side. And when the march was over, the kid was rather tired.
The digger said, "Whose medals, son?" To which the kid replied, "They belong to Daddy, but he did not come back. He died up in New Guinea on a lonely jungle track." The kid looked rather sad. Then his tear came to his eye. The digger said, "Don't cry, my son, and I'll tell you why. Your daddy marched with us today, all the bloomin' way. We diggers know that he was there. It's like that on Anzac Day."
The kid looked rather puzzled and didn't understand, but the digger went on talking and started to wave his hand. "For this great land we live in, there's a price we have to pay, for all the fun and merriment in this country where we live. The price was that some soldier his precious life must give."
Your daddy died for us, my son, for all things good and true. I wonder if you can understand all the things I have said to you. The kid looked up at the digger just for a little while, and with a changed expression said with a lovely little smile, "I know my daddy marched here today, this our Anzac Day. I know he did, all of the blooming way."
Thank you for those wonderful tributes, children, lest we forget. I will now call on our Padre, Peter Hall, to offer prayers. Welcome, Peter.
This Anzac Day we come to remember those who've given their lives for our freedom. You know, Australia has been involved in a number of conflicts, not just the 2 great world wars and the Vietnam War, but other conflicts too, so that we have young veterans today who are also suffering. And they've come out of loyalty to their country and to their families and people. And so today we remember them. And I want to quote a couple of verses from John's Gospel, where Jesus had these words to say. He said, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. And then greater love has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." You know, those are tremendous words, and if only the nations of this world could listen to those words and try to live by them, we may not have so many that die and injured. For, you know, we're finding in these conflicts today that people are not only physically injured, but mentally too. And this takes years and years for them to recover. So let's have a word of prayer for these people. Eternal God, in whose keeping are the souls of us all, we remember before you all those who in the great wars and other conflicts have laid down their lives, and those that have also suffered injury. And Lord, we think of them, especially those that have been dear to us. We grant that at last they and we may be presented faultless before the presence of your glory with exceeding joy when the time comes. We remember before you all those who bear the marks of suffering made by war, those broken in body, blind, helpless, or clouded in the mind, especially those known to ourselves. And we ask that our thought of them does not fail or grow weary, but may our sympathy deepen over the years to bear one another's burdens and so fulfill your law. We remember before you all who have lost loved ones, parents and bereaved of children, wives made widows, children left fatherless, especially those known to ourselves. Give to them that are sorrowing their grief. Give them peace, Lord. Give them comfort. And Lord, we ask you to make our remembrance a holy thing, something that we hold special and dear year by year in our lives, but perhaps not just year by year, but day by day. Grant for the sake of those that we name in our hearts, and for the sake of generations yet unborn, that the nations may come to a time of abiding peace. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Peter. Normally at this part of our service, we would actually have a laying of rosemary by the local school children in line with the reading of the names of the fallen. This year that's not possible for us to do, but what we have done is we have created a separate video that will be made available for anybody who wants to watch that part of the service. I want to now thank our lovely local talent, the Do Up Dolls. These ladies put in such an amazing effort into supporting us within the community and bringing their beautiful voices to our services. So here, if you could please be upstanding and join in the hymn Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, with no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
Please be upstanding for the reading of the Ode. This year it'll be read by one of our members, Squadron Leader Chris Davey, who joined the RAF in 1981. Having served 38 years, he's currently the Space Sustainment Operations Manager at Wide Area Space and Surveillance Systems Program in RAF Edinburgh. Thank you, Chris.
They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds unaccounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age will not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
Lest we forget. We will now have local legend Victor Flatt play the last post for us. Victor has been doing an amazing job of playing the bugle for us now for over 45 years. Next we will have our wreath laying part of the service, and we'd like to thank Chris Ellis for stepping in to play the bagpipes for us, because having the lament playing during the wreath laying is always a beautiful part of the service, and it's very touching. So for the wreath laying we have Tracy Gilmartin laying for the Yandina-Eumundi-RSL. Anthony Morehouse for Sergeant Brett Wood and Sergeant Peter Caff from 2 Commando Regiment Special Operations Command. Marty Hunt, member for Nicklin. David Law, Sunshine Coast Council. We would also like to ask anybody that would normally lay a wreath with us just to be able to do that. So just take a moment for yourselves and give thought to that. So we've got a beautiful picture of the cenotaph here. Please remain standing for the New Zealand National Anthem. That will be followed by the Australian National Anthem.
Man for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts. Our beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every state advance Australia fair. In joyful strains and let us sing, advance Australia fair. Beneath our radiant southern cross we'll toil with hearts and hands to make this commonwealth of ours renowned of all the lands. For those who come across the seas, we've boundless plains to share. With courage let us all combine to advance Australia fair. In joyful strains and let us sing, advance Australia fair.
So thank you for attending our service today. Anzac Day means so many different things to so many different people. And whatever that means for you, we hope that we've been able to play a part in that. And we'd like to thank everybody from our community that's contributed in so many different ways to making today happen. To close out the service today, we've very kindly been allowed to use the music of Xavier Rudd. We were hoping that Xavier would be able to join us and perform to close this out live, but that just unfortunately wasn't going to happen. So we are really grateful though, because it's a beautiful song and just so appropriate for this time that we're in. So please take these few moments just to relax and reflect and focus on what's really important. So this beautiful video has been put together by Andy Furno, who's our previous speaker from Remembrance Day, and we're very grateful for Andy's support. Thank you.
Follow the sun and which way the wind blows when this day is done. Breathe in the air, set your intentions, dream with care. Tomorrow's a new day for everyone, and a brand new moon and brand new sun. Follow the sun, the direction of the birds, the direction of love. Breathe in the air, cherish this moment, cherish this breath. Tomorrow's a new day for everyone, a brand new moon, brand new sun. When you feel life coming down on you like a heavy weight, water's edge, remember your place. Many moons have risen and fallen long before you came. So which way is the wind blowing, and what does your heart say? Follow the sun, and which way the wind blows when this day is done.